My name is Sandra Rivers, and at 60 years old, I've learned that some wounds don't heal, they calcify into something harder and more useful than bone. 13 years. That's how long it had been since I'd held my grandchildren, since I'd seen their faces except in stolen glimpses through social media accounts that blocked me as soon as they discovered I was watching. 13 years since my daughter-in-law Victoria had successfully turned my son James against me, poisoning him with lies until he chose her version of reality over the woman who had given him life. The morning that changed everything started like any other in my carefully ordered existence. I sat in my penthouse apartment, drinking coffee from bone china that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, reading financial reports that confirmed what I already knew. My textile company had become an empire worth $15 million. $15 million built from nothing after my husband died and left me with debts and a broken heart. $15 million earned through years of 18-hour days, missed holidays, and the kind of focused determination that comes from having everything you love stripped away. I'd built that company not just for financial security, but as a weapon. Money, I'd learned, was the only language that people like Victoria truly understood. My phone rang at precisely 9 a.m., my secretary, confirming that the sale had gone through. Hartman Industries had purchased Rivers Textiles for exactly what I demanded, not a penny less. "Congratulations, Mrs. Rivers," Patricia said, her voice warm with genuine pleasure. "You're officially a very wealthy woman." I was already wealthy, Patricia. Now I'm free. Free to execute the plan I'd been crafting for over a decade. Free to reclaim what had been stolen from me, one careful move at a time. I was reviewing the architectural plans for my new mansion. A sprawling estate in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, complete with guest wings and a pool house, when my doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I saw a face I hadn't seen in person for 3 years. Victoria herself, standing at my door with the kind of confident smile that had once charmed my son into abandoning his family. At 38, she was still beautiful in that carefully maintained way that money could buy. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, and the kind of posture that spoke of someone who never doubted her own importance. But there was something different in her eyes, a desperation that hadn't been there before. I took my time walking to the door, adjusting my pearl necklace and smoothing my silver hair. At 60, I'd learned that true power was best displayed through absolute composure. "Victoria," I said as I opened the door, my voice carrying just the right note of surprised politeness. "How unexpected." "Sandra," she replied, her smile never wavering. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I heard about your business sale. Congratulations." "Thank you. Though I'm curious how you heard about it so quickly." Her laugh was like ice crystals falling. "Good news travels fast in certain circles. May I come in?" I stepped aside, though everything in my body screamed against allowing this woman into my space. She moved through my apartment with the kind of casual assessment that spoke of someone mentally calculating worth. "Beautiful place," she said, running her finger along my antique mantelpiece. "Though I imagine you'll be moving soon, with all that money." "I am planning some changes, yes. That's actually why I'm here." She turned to face me, and I saw it. The moment she shifted from polite visitor to predator sensing opportunity. "James and I have been talking, and we think it's time to put the past behind us." "Do you?" "The twins are 17 now. They're going to college soon, and James feels, well, he feels like they should know their grandmother before they leave home." The twins. Alex and Lily. My grandchildren, who had been 4 years old the last time I'd held them, who had grown into teenagers while I watched from afar through school newsletters and newspaper photos of academic achievements. How generous of James to finally remember he has a mother. Victoria's smile flickered slightly. "Sandra, I know there have been misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" The word came out sharper than I'd intended. Is that what you call it when you systematically poison my son against me? When you move him across the country to ensure I can't see my grandchildren? When you return every birthday card I send unopened? That's all in the past now. We want to move forward. I walked to my window, looking out at the city I'd conquered through sheer determination. In the reflection, I could see Victoria studying my apartment, no doubt calculating how much each piece was worth. What exactly are you proposing, Victoria? We think you should move in with us. I turned slowly, making sure she could see nothing but polite interest in my expression. Move in with you? We have that big house in Westfield, plenty of room. The twins would love getting to know you, and you could help out with things. Things. Like paying for the lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to, but could no longer afford. And why would I want to do that? Because we're family, Sandra. Because James misses you, even if he won't admit it. Because you've missed out on so much with the twins, and this would be your chance to make up for lost time. Make up for lost time. As if 13 years of stolen birthdays and missed milestones were my fault rather than hers. Where would I live in this arrangement? We thought the pool house would be perfect for you. Private, but close to the family. The pool house. Not the main house where family belonged, but the servants' quarters where I could be useful without being inconvenient. I smiled, the kind of smile I'd perfected in boardrooms when someone thought they were smarter than me. That's very thoughtful of you, Victoria. But I'm afraid I have other plans. Her confidence wavered slightly. Other plans? I've purchased a new home. Quite substantial, actually. 15 bedrooms, guest wings, staff quarters. I'll be moving there next week. The color drained from her face as she processed this information. 15 bedrooms? That's quite large for one person. Yes, it is. But then again, I'm hoping it won't always be just one person. I let that statement hang in the air, watching her calculate the implications. The twins will love visiting, she said quickly, trying to regain control of the conversation. Though, of course, with school and activities, they're quite busy. Of course they are. 17-year-olds always are. I walked to my desk and picked up a leather portfolio, the architectural plans for my new home. Would you like to see it? I asked, opening the portfolio to reveal detailed drawings of what could only be described as a palace. Victoria leaned forward despite herself, her eyes widening as she took in the scope of my new acquisition. My God, she whispered. This must have cost several million, yes. But money isn't an object when it comes to family. She looked up at me sharply. Family? My grandchildren, Victoria. The family you've kept for me for 13 years. The family I intend to reclaim. For the first time since she'd arrived, Victoria's mask slipped completely. Fear flickered across her features, raw, undisguised fear. Sandra, she said carefully, what exactly are you planning? I closed the portfolio and walked to the door, opening it in clear dismissal. I'm planning to be the grandmother I was never allowed to be. I'm planning to give Alex and Lily everything they've been missing. And I'm planning to show them exactly what real family love looks like. As she gathered her purse and moved toward the door, I added quietly, Oh, and Victoria? Thank you for the pool house suggestion. I'll keep that in mind when I'm deciding where to put the staff quarters in my new home. The door closed behind her with a soft click, but I knew this was far from over. Victoria had made a mistake coming here, showing me her desperation, revealing that whatever financial cushion she'd been living on was growing thin. She thought she could use my love for my grandchildren as a weapon against me. What she didn't understand was that love, properly focused, could be the most devastating weapon of all. I returned to my desk and pulled out a different folder, one I'd been building for years. School records, newspaper clippings, academic awards, social media screenshots. Everything about Alex and Lily that I'd been able to gather from the shadows. It was time to step out of the shadows and into their lives. Not as the bitter, rejected grandmother Victoria had painted me as, but as the loving, powerful woman I'd always been. The war for my grandchildren was about to begin, and I intended to win. If you've ever been told you're too old to start over, let me tell you, that's a lie. Your story isn't over, and you still have chapters left to write. Our best-selling book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with simple, powerful steps to help you heal, rebuild, and fall in love with life again. Click the link in the description box and start your new beginning today. And if Sandra's strategic approach is already giving you chills, you know you're in for something special. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of women who refuse to let anyone else write their ending. That night, I sat in my study, surrounded by the remnants of 13 stolen years. Photo albums that ended abruptly when the twins turned 4. Birthday cards returned unopened. Christmas presents I'd continued buying and storing, hoping against hope that someday I'd be allowed to give them. The last real conversation I'd had with James played in my memory like a broken record. He'd called me 3 days after his father's funeral, his voice cold and unfamiliar. "Mom, Victoria thinks it would be best if we took some space. The kids are confused about Grandpa's death, and she feels like having too many people around is making it harder for them to process. James, they need their family right now. They need stability and love. They have that. They have Victoria and me. What about me? I'm their grandmother. Victoria is their mother. She knows what's best for them. Victoria knows what's best." Those 5 words had haunted me for over a decade, the moment I realized my son had chosen his wife over the woman who'd raised him. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd labeled grandchildren. Hundreds of photos gathered from school websites, social media accounts of their friends, local newspaper coverage of academic achievements. It was a heartbreaking collection of milestones observed from afar. Alex at 12, winning the state science fair. Lily at 14, performing in her school's production of Romeo and Juliet. Birthday parties I wasn't invited to, graduations I watched from the back of auditoriums, Christmas mornings that happened without me. But as I studied the photos, I began to see something else. In the candid shots, in the unguarded moments between poses, I saw something that gave me hope. Neither twin looked particularly happy. Alex, brilliant and serious, seemed isolated even in group photos. Lily, artistic and sensitive, had developed the kind of guarded expression that spoke of someone who'd learned not to trust too easily. They looked like children who'd been controlled rather than loved, managed rather than nurtured. They looked like James had looked when he was their age, before I'd learned to balance discipline with warmth, before I'd understood that love meant listening as much as teaching. My phone rang, interrupting my painful nostalgia. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Rivers? This is Patricia Hartman from Hartman Industries. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. How can I help you?" "I wanted to follow up on our conversation earlier about your philanthropic interests. You mentioned wanting to support educational programs for gifted students." I smiled, remembering the careful conversation we'd had during the final stages of a sale. Patricia Hartman was a woman who understood the value of strategic generosity. "Yes, I'm particularly interested in programs that support advanced mathematics and creative writing." "Why do you ask?" "My daughter attends Westfield Academy, the same school your grandchildren attend, I believe. They're launching a new enrichment program this fall, and they're looking for sponsors." Westfield Academy, where Alex was reportedly excelling in advanced physics, and Lily was the editor of the literary magazine. "Tell me more about this program." "It's designed for their most gifted students, accelerated research projects, mentorship opportunities, college preparation beyond what they normally offer. They're looking for someone to endow the program, provide funding for equipment, maybe even mentor some of the students directly." I was already reaching for my checkbook. What kind of funding are we talking about? They were hoping for 100,000 initially, but honestly, they'd be thrilled with anything. Patricia, tell them I'll provide 250,000 for the initial endowment, plus whatever additional support the students need. Equipment, supplies, college counseling, whatever it takes. There was a pause. That's incredibly generous, Sandra. They'll be over the moon. There is one condition. Of course. I'd like to be personally involved in the selection process for the participants. And I'd like to mentor some of the students myself, particularly those interested in business and entrepreneurship. I'm sure they'd welcome that. Your experience building your company would be invaluable to these kids. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Victoria thought she could keep my grandchildren from me by controlling access to my son. What she didn't understand was that there were other ways to reach them. Ways that would make me not the bitter grandmother they'd been taught to avoid, but the successful, generous woman they might actually want to know. I opened my laptop and began researching Westfield Academy more thoroughly. Their website showed photos of recent events, and there they were, Alex and Lily Rivers, photographed at the Academic Excellence Awards ceremony. Alex had won first place in the regional science competition. Lily had received the Creative Writing Award for her poetry collection. They were brilliant, these grandchildren I'd never been allowed to know. And if Victoria thought she could keep me away from them by putting walls around the family home, she was about to learn that some walls could be climbed by those determined enough to try. I spent the rest of the night planning my approach. Not the desperate, demanding tactics of a rejected grandmother, but the strategic patience of a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. Victoria had made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed that after 13 years of exile, I'd grown weak with grief and loneliness. Instead, I'd grown strong with purpose. And now it was time to show her exactly what that purpose could accomplish. 3 weeks later, I stood in the marble foyer of my new mansion, watching the interior designers put the finishing touches on what could only be described as a palace of possibilities. 15,000 square feet of Georgian elegance, with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and enough space to house a small army. The mansion sat on 5 acres in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, the same neighborhood where James and Victoria lived, though their modest colonial seemed almost quaint compared to my new residence. The library is ready for your inspection, Mrs. Rivers, called Margaret, the head interior designer. I followed her to what had once been 3 separate rooms, now opened into a magnificent space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, Persian rugs, and comfortable reading chairs positioned near tall windows that overlooked the gardens. "It's perfect," I said, running my hand along the mahogany desk that would serve as my workspace. "What about the guest wings?" "Both fully furnished and ready. Each has its own sitting room, bedroom, and private bath. Perfect for extended visits." Extended visits. Exactly what I had in mind. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Hartman. "Westfield Academy Board approved your proposal unanimously. They'd like to meet with you next week to discuss implementation. Students will be selected by the end of the month." I smiled, typing back, "Excellent. I'm particularly interested in reviewing applications from students with surnames beginning with R." The meeting at Westfield Academy was everything I'd hoped for, and more. The headmaster, Dr. William Foster, was a distinguished man in his 60s who clearly understood the value of generous benefactors. "Mrs. Rivers," he said, standing as I entered his office, "we cannot thank you enough for your generosity. This endowment will transform our ability to serve our most gifted students." "Education is the greatest investment we can make in the future," I replied, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. "I'm particularly interested in mentoring students who show entrepreneurial potential." "Wonderful. We've already begun reviewing applications, and I think you'll be impressed by the caliber of our students." He handed me a stack of files. the top two bearing the names I'd been waiting to see: Alexander Rivers and Lillian Rivers. I kept my expression neutral as I opened Alex's file. Straight A's in advanced mathematics and science, leader of the robotics team, accepted into MIT's early admission program. His personal essay spoke of wanting to build technologies that solve real-world problems. Lily's file was equally impressive. Editor of the literary magazine, winner of multiple poetry competitions, already published in several teen literary journals. Her essay described her passion for using words to illuminate truth and create connection. "These two students," I said, tapping their files, "they seem exceptional." "Oh yes, Alex and Lily Rivers. They're among our brightest. Though I must say, they're also among our most reserved students." Reserved, polite, well-behaved, excellent students. But they seem to have built walls around themselves. Lily especially. She's brilliant, but she seems to carry some sadness. Alex is similar, though he hides it behind academic achievement. I studied their photos, Alex with his serious dark eyes and Lily with her artistic, thoughtful expression. They looked like children who'd learned early that showing vulnerability was dangerous. "I'd like to invite both of them to participate in the program," I said, "along with perhaps 6 other students." "Excellent choice. I'll have them contacted immediately." That evening, I sat in my new library, surrounded by the tools of my patient revenge. I'd had my assistant compile detailed profiles of both twins. Their interests, their achievements, their social media activity, limited and carefully curated, and, most importantly, their schedule of extracurricular activities. The next phase of my plan required perfect timing and careful orchestration. Victoria had spent 13 years painting me as the bitter, rejected grandmother. Now I needed to show Alex and Lily who I really was: successful, generous, and genuinely interested in their futures. My phone rang at 8 p.m. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard a voice that made my heart skip. "Mrs. Rivers? This is Alex Rivers. From Westfield Academy. My grandson. Calling me directly." "Alex," I said, keeping my voice warm but professional. "What a pleasant surprise. How can I help you?" "Dr. Foster said you're the sponsor of the new enrichment program and that you might be willing to mentor some of the students." "I am indeed. I understand you're interested in technology and engineering." "Yes, ma'am. I'm working on a project involving sustainable energy solutions for urban environments. Dr. Foster thought you might be able to provide some guidance on the business applications." Business applications. My brilliant grandson wanted to learn about turning innovation into impact. "I'd be happy to discuss your project, Alex. Would you like to meet for coffee sometime this week? I'd love to hear more about your ideas." There was a pause, and I could practically hear him weighing his decision. "That would be great. Though, I should probably ask my parents first." "Of course. Why don't you discuss it with them and let me know what works for your family?" After we hung up, I sat back in my chair with a smile. The first move had been made, and it hadn't come from me. It had come from Alex himself. Victoria couldn't object to a meeting that was part of an official school program, particularly one I was funding so generously. 2 days later, Alex called back. "My parents said it would be fine to meet with you about the program, though my mom wanted me to make sure it was during school hours and at the school." Victoria's conditions. She was trying to control the situation while still allowing the meeting she couldn't reasonably forbid. "Of course," I said. "Why don't we meet in the school library tomorrow afternoon? And Alex, feel free to invite your sister if she's interested. I understand she's also part of the program." The next afternoon, I arrived at Westfield Academy dressed in a navy business suit and my grandmother's pearls. I carried a leather portfolio filled with information about entrepreneurship and innovation, but more importantly, I carried 13 years of love and longing to finally meet my grandchildren as the successful woman I'd become. I was sitting in the library when they arrived. Alex tall and serious, Lily petite with long dark hair and intelligent eyes. They approached my table hesitantly, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. "Mrs. Rivers?" Alex said softly. "Please call me Sandra," I said, standing to shake their hands. "Thank you both for taking the time to meet with me." As we sat down, I studied their faces, seeing traces of James as a child, echoes of my late husband's features, but most of all, seeing two remarkable young people who'd grown up without me. "Dr. Foster says you're interested in business applications for technology," I said to Alex, opening my portfolio. "Tell me about your sustainable energy project." As Alex began describing his ideas, complex, innovative, brilliant ideas, I saw Lily watching me carefully, studying my reactions, trying to understand who this woman was that their mother had kept them from. "And you, Lily," I said when Alex finished, "I understand you're a gifted writer. What kind of writing interests you most?" "Poetry mostly," she said quietly. "And personal essays. I like writing about real experiences, about truth." About truth. My literary granddaughter was interested in truth, in a family where lies had shaped her entire childhood. "I'd love to read some of your work sometime," I said. I've always believed that writing is one of the most powerful ways to change the world. For the first time, Lily smiled, a small, tentative smile that broke my heart with its beauty. We talked for 2 hours about their dreams, their goals, their hopes for college and beyond. They were brilliant, both of them, but there was something guarded in their demeanor, something that spoke of children who'd learned to be careful with their trust. As we prepared to leave, Lily asked quietly, "Mrs. Rivers? Why haven't we met before now?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel Alex watching me, waiting for my answer. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "families go through difficult periods. Adults make decisions that affect everyone, and children get caught in the middle. But I'm here now, and I hope we can get to know each other better." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was the beginning of truth. More truth than they'd probably been given about me in 13 years. As I watched them walk away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade, hope mixed with determination. The first seeds had been planted. Now, it was time to help them grow. Victoria's reaction to my involvement in the twins' school was swift and predictable. 2 days after my meeting with Alex and Lily, she appeared at my new mansion unannounced, her composure significantly less intact than during her previous visit. I was in my garden, supervising the installation of a greenhouse and art studio, additions I'd specifically designed with my grandchildren in mind, when Thomas, my new groundskeeper, announced her arrival. "There's a woman at the gate, ma'am. Says her name is Victoria Rivers and that she needs to speak with you urgently." Through the security monitor, I could see her pacing behind the wrought iron gates, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon, and her usually perfect hair showing signs of distress. "Let her in, Thomas. And please have Maria prepare tea in the sunroom." I took my time walking to the house, allowing Victoria to wait in the marble foyer while I changed from my gardening clothes into something more appropriate for confrontation. A cream-colored cashmere sweater, gray wool trousers, and my pearls, the armor of a woman who'd learned that looking unruffled was essential when dealing with enemies. Victoria was examining the oil paintings in my foyer when I descended the staircase, her eyes calculating their worth with a practiced assessment of someone who'd grown up measuring everything by its price tag. "Victoria," I said warmly, "what a lovely surprise. Please come into the sunroom. I've had tea prepared." The sunroom was my favorite space in the new house, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, comfortable furniture arranged for intimate conversation, and fresh flowers from my greenhouse creating an atmosphere of cultivated elegance. "Your house is Victoria paused, clearly struggling to find words that wouldn't reveal her jealousy. Quite impressive. Thank you. I wanted to create a space where family could feel welcome. She flinched at the word family, and I smiled inwardly. Sandra, I need to talk to you about the twins. Of course. They're remarkable young people. You should be very proud. I am proud. That's why I'm concerned about this mentorship program you've gotten them involved in. I poured tea into delicate china cups, taking my time with the ritual. Concerned? I would think you'd be pleased that they're receiving additional support for their education. Support from their grandmother, who hasn't been part of their lives? There it was, the accusation disguised as concern, the attempt to make me the villain in a story she'd been crafting for 13 years. Haven't been part of their lives, I repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting way to phrase it. As if I made the choice to be absent. You know that's not what I meant, do I? Because from my perspective, I've tried repeatedly to be part of their lives, only to be blocked at every turn. Victoria set down her teacup with a sharp clink. This isn't about the past, Sandra. This is about what's best for Alex and Lily now. And you've determined that having a successful, loving grandmother in their lives isn't what's best for them? I've determined that confusing them with divided loyalties isn't what's best for them. Divided loyalties. The phrase revealed everything about how Victoria viewed family relationships as competitions rather than connections. Victoria, are you afraid that if Alex and Lily get to know me, they might question the story they've been told about why I've been absent from their lives? Her face flushed red. There's no story, Sandra. There are just facts. Facts? Like the fact that I've sent birthday cards every year that were returned unopened? Or the fact that I've tried to call on holidays only to find my number blocked? Or perhaps the fact that I've been contributing to a college fund for both children that you've been accessing without their knowledge? She went pale. How do you know about? I know about a lot of things, Victoria. Including the fact that James's graphic design business has been struggling for the past 3 years, and that you've been using my contributions to maintain a lifestyle you can no longer afford. You have no right. I have every right to know where my money goes, especially when it's meant for my grandchildren's future. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where I hoped Alex and Lily might someday walk with me. Here's what I think is really happening, I continued without turning around. You're realizing that the financial cushion you've been living on is disappearing. James's business isn't recovering, your own career never materialized, and you're facing the prospect of actually having to work for a living instead of relying on my generosity. That's not. And now you discover that not only have I sold my company for $15 million, but I'm actively building relationships with the children you've kept from me. Children who are almost adults and will soon be making their own decisions about who they want in their lives. I turned back to face her and saw fear in her eyes, raw, undisguised fear. You're terrified that they might choose me. Victoria shot to her feet. I'm their mother. I raised them. I've been there for every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak. Yes, you have. And I'm grateful to you for that. My calm response seemed to deflate her anger slightly. You are? Of course. You've done an excellent job raising them. They're brilliant, accomplished, well-behaved young people. But Victoria, being their mother doesn't mean you have to be their only family. It does when that family is toxic. Toxic. I laughed softly. Is that what you've told them about me? That I'm toxic? She had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I've protected them from unnecessary confusion and hurt by lying to them about who I am and why I've been absent from their lives. I've never lied to them. Haven't you? What exactly have you told them about me, Victoria? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating how much truth she could safely reveal. I've told them that you disapproved of me from the beginning. That you tried to break up James and me. That when we moved to give our family a fresh start, you chose to cut us off rather than accept our decision. I see. And the birthday cards? The phone calls? The college fund? They don't know about those things. Of course they don't. Because those facts would complicate the narrative you've created. I walked back to my chair and sat down, pouring myself another cup of tea. Victoria, let me be very clear about something. I'm not going away. I'm not going to disappear quietly while you continue to keep my grandchildren from me. They're 17 years old enough to make their own decisions about relationships, old enough to handle the truth about family dynamics. What are you saying? I'm saying that you can either work with me to gradually build a healthy relationship with Alex and Lily, or you can continue to fight me and risk them discovering the truth on their own. What truth? That their grandmother has loved them desperately for 13 years. That she's built an empire partly in hopes of being able to provide for them someday. That she's never stopped trying to be part of their lives, despite being blocked at every turn. Victoria sank back into her chair, looking suddenly smaller and more fragile. They love me, she whispered. I'm their mother. Yes, you are. And nothing I do will ever change that. But they can love both of us, Victoria. Love isn't finite. You want them to choose you over me. No, I said firmly. I want them to know they don't have to choose at all. But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Because if Victoria continued to fight me, if she continued to try to poison my relationship with my grandchildren, then yes, I would make them choose. And I intended to make sure they chose correctly. The change in Alex and Lily was subtle at first, but unmistakable to someone who'd been watching them as carefully as I had. Over the following weeks, they began reaching out independently. Alex with questions about business strategy, Lily with requests for feedback on her writing. I was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries, always meeting them at school or in public places, always keeping Victoria informed of our interactions. But with each conversation, I could see them growing more curious about the woman they'd been kept from knowing. Mrs. Rivers, Lily said one afternoon as we sat in the Westfield Academy library, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you really start your textile company? I set down the collection of her poems I'd been reading, remarkable work, full of insight and emotional depth that spoke of an old soul in a 17-year-old body. That's a complicated question with a simple answer, I said. I started it because I had to survive. What do you mean? I studied her face, seeing genuine curiosity rather than the polite interest she'd shown in our earlier meetings. When your grandfather died, he left behind more debts than assets. I had a choice. I could accept charity and live modestly, or I could build something that would ensure I never had to depend on anyone else again. You chose independence. I chose power. There's a difference. She leaned forward, intrigued. What kind of difference? Independence means you can take care of yourself. Power means you can take care of the people you love, whether they want you to or not. I watched her process this distinction, seeing her writer's mind cataloging the nuance. Is that what you're doing now? Taking care of people whether they want you to or not. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good, perhaps. What do you think I'm doing? I think you're trying to get to know Alex and me despite Mom not wanting you to. And how does that make you feel? Lily was quiet for a long moment, staring out the library window at the courtyard where other students were eating lunch and laughing with the carelessness of teenagers who'd never had to navigate family landmines. Confused, she said finally. Mom always said you weren't interested in being a grandmother, that you chose your career over family. And what do you think now? I think if someone builds a $15 million company and then sells it to spend time mentoring teenagers, they probably didn't choose career over family. They probably chose career for family. I felt my heart swell with pride and love for this perceptive young woman who'd inherited not just my husband's eyes, but his ability to see through people's facades to their true motivations. "You're very wise for 17, I said softly. "I've had to be. Our family doesn't exactly encourage questions." That single sentence revealed more about their home life than months of observation could have. In a family where questions weren't encouraged, children learned to find their own answers, and sometimes those answers weren't the ones their parents wanted them to find. "Lily, can I tell you something your father probably doesn't remember?" She nodded. "When he was about your age, he went through a phase where he questioned everything, my rules, my expectations, my decisions. It drove me crazy at the time, but looking back, I realize it was the moment he started becoming his own person." "What happened?" "I learned to trust him to make good decisions, even when those decisions weren't the ones I would have made." "Did he make good decisions?" I thought about James choosing Victoria, about the 13 years of estrangement, about the grandchildren I'd missed watching grow up. "Some of them," I said carefully. "But even the ones I disagreed with taught him important lessons about consequences and accountability." That afternoon, Alex joined us for what had become our weekly mentoring session. He arrived carrying a thick folder of research and looking more animated than I'd seen him since our first meeting. "I've been working on the business plan you suggested," he said, spreading papers across the library table, "for turning my sustainable energy project into an actual company." As he walked me through his projections, his market analysis, his plans for scaling production, I felt a fierce pride in this brilliant young man who'd inherited his grandfather's analytical mind and his father's creative problem-solving abilities. "This is exceptional work, Alex," I said when he finished. "Have you shown this to your parents?" His enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "I tried to talk to Dad about it, but he's been pretty stressed about his own business lately. And Mom." He glanced at Lily, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Mom thinks I should focus on getting into MIT instead of getting distracted by entrepreneurial fantasies." Entrepreneurial fantasies. Victoria's dismissive phrase revealed everything about her understanding of ambition and innovation. "What do you think?" I asked. "Do you think your ideas are fantasies?" "I think they're possibilities," he said firmly. "I think if I don't try to make them real, I'll always wonder what might have happened." "Then you should try. The worst that can happen is you'll learn valuable lessons about business and innovation. The best that can happen is you'll change the world." Lily smiled at her brother. "See? I told you grandmother would understand." Grandmother. Not Mrs. Rivers or Sandra, but grandmother. The word hung in the air like a gift, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Is that okay?" Lily asked quickly, seeing my emotional response. "Calling you grandmother? I mean, if it makes things weird with Mom?" "It makes me happier than you can possibly imagine," I said softly. "And Lily, you don't need anyone's permission to acknowledge family relationships." That evening, I was in my library working on investment strategies when my phone rang. James's name appeared on the caller ID, the first time he'd called me directly in over 2 years. "Hello, James." "Mom." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "We need to talk." "Of course. Would you like to come over?" "I'm not coming to your house. Meet me at Meridian Coffee tomorrow at noon." He hung up before I could respond, but I was smiling. Victoria had clearly told him about the twins calling me grandmother, and he was angry enough to break his own rule about not communicating with me. Perfect. The next day, I arrived at Meridian Coffee 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where we could speak privately. James arrived exactly on time, looking older than his 39 years and carrying the weight of someone who'd been making compromises too long. He'd inherited his father's height and dark hair, but there was something diminished about him that hadn't been there in his 20s. The confident young man who'd once dreamed of becoming a renowned graphic designer had been replaced by someone who looked perpetually tired and vaguely defeated. "Mom," he said, sitting down across from me without preamble. You need to back off. Hello to you too, James. You look well. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't pretend this is a social call. Victoria told me what you said to her, and I'm telling you to stay away from my kids. Your kids? When did they become exclusively yours? They've always been mine and Victoria's. You forfeited any claim to them when you chose to cut us out of your life. I stared at him across the small table. This man I'd raised and loved and lost to someone else's poison. Is that really what you believe happened, James? That I chose to cut you out? I know what happened. I lived it. You lived Victoria's version of it. But since you're here, why don't you tell me what you remember? I remember you disapproving of Victoria from the moment I introduced her to you. I was concerned about some of her behaviors, yes. You tried to break us up. I suggested you might want to take more time getting to know each other before making permanent commitments. You refused to accept our relationship. I refused to pretend I thought it was healthy when she was isolating you from your friends and family. James's jaw tightened. She never isolated me from anyone. Really? When was the last time you spoke to your college roommate David? Or your cousin Michael? Or any of the friends you had before you met Victoria? He was quiet, but I could see him thinking. When was the last time you made a major decision without asking Victoria's permission first? I continued. When was the last time you pursued one of your own interests that she didn't share? Marriage is about compromise. Marriage is about partnership, James. Compromise suggests that both people give up things they want for the good of the relationship. What has Victoria given up for you? Again, silence. I'll tell you what I see, I said, leaning forward. I see a brilliant, creative man who's spent 15 years making himself smaller and smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who he should be. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Your graphic design business is failing because you've been trying to build it according to Victoria's ideas about what constitutes respectable work instead of following your own creative vision. His face went pale. How do you know about my business? I know because I care about you, James. I've always cared about you, even when you decided I was the enemy. You are the enemy. You're trying to turn my children against their mother. I'm trying to give my grandchildren the chance to know their grandmother. The same chance you had with your own grandparents, who loved you unconditionally and helped shape you into the good man you became before you forgot who you were. James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the coffee shop floor. Stay away from Alex and Lily, Mom. I mean it. Or what, James? You'll cut off communication with me? Stop the twins from seeing me? Make me disappear from their lives? I stood up as well, matching his intensity with my own quiet determination. You've already tried all of those things, and yet here we are. Your children sought me out, James. They came to me because they were curious about the grandmother they'd never been allowed to know. They're confused. They're intelligent. There's a difference. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card, my new personal card with the address and phone number of my mansion. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what's best for Alex and Lily, not what's convenient for Victoria or what protects the lies she's told, call me. I placed the card on the table and walked away, leaving him standing there with his anger and his confusion and the growing realization that his children were beginning to see through the carefully constructed story he'd helped create. That evening, Lily called my personal cell phone. Grandmother? Dad says we can't meet with you anymore. He says it's confusing us and hurting Mom's feelings. How do you feel about that, sweetheart? I feel like I'm being treated like a child who can't make her own decisions about who she wants to know. And Alex. He's furious. He says Dad is treating us like we're too stupid to understand family dynamics, and that maybe there's a reason Mom doesn't want us to know you. Smart children. Too smart to be fooled by lies much longer. What do you want to do? I asked. We want to keep seeing you, but we don't want to make things worse at home. Then don't make things worse at home. But remember, Lily, you're both almost 18. Soon, You'll be making your own decisions about everything, including family relationships. Are you saying we should wait until we're legal adults? I'm saying that truth has a way of revealing itself, regardless of who tries to hide it. And I'm saying that I love you both enough to be patient while that happens. After we hung up, I sat in my library surrounded by the tools of my patient revenge and realized that the most important phase was about to begin. Victoria had overplayed her hand by trying to cut off my access to the twins. James had revealed his own weakness by issuing ultimatums he couldn't enforce. And Alex and Lily had revealed that they were ready to start making their own choices about who deserved their loyalty. The war for my grandchildren's hearts was entering its final phase, and I intended to win. 2 weeks passed without any contact from Alex or Lily. I respected their decision to avoid making their home situation more difficult, but I used the time strategically, gathering intelligence and preparing for what I knew would be the next phase of Victoria's campaign against me. My private investigator, a discreet woman named Jennifer Walsh, provided updates that confirmed what I'd suspected. James's graphic design business was indeed failing, not due to lack of talent, but due to poor business decisions driven by Victoria's insistence that he focus on prestigious clients rather than profitable ones. The company's 3 months behind on rent, Jennifer reported during our meeting in my study. They've lost 2 major clients in the past 6 months, and Victoria's been pressuring him to apply for a job at a corporate marketing firm instead of trying to save his own business. And financially, they're living on credit cards and the remainder of the college fund you established for the twins. Victoria's been withdrawing from it regularly, claiming it's for educational expenses, but the money's been going toward maintaining their lifestyle. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Not only had Victoria kept me from my grandchildren, but she'd been stealing their future to maintain her present comfort. What about the twins? How are they handling the restrictions on seeing me? From what I can observe, not well. Alex has become increasingly withdrawn, spending most of his free time in the school's engineering lab. Lily's been staying after school in the library, ostensibly working on college applications, but mostly just avoiding going home. My poor grandchildren, caught in the middle of a war they didn't understand, suffering for choices adults had made before they were old enough to have opinions about family dynamics. That afternoon, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. I called Dr. Foster at Westfield Academy. Dr. Foster, this is Sandra Rivers. I wanted to follow up on the mentorship program and discuss some additional opportunities for our participants. Of course, Mrs. Rivers. The program has been incredibly successful. The students are producing exceptional work. I'm particularly impressed with Alex Rivers' entrepreneurial project. I'd like to discuss providing additional funding to help him develop his sustainable energy prototype. That's very generous. I'm sure Alex would be thrilled. There's one condition. I'd like to present the opportunity to him directly, perhaps at a formal ceremony where his parents could attend to see their son being recognized for his achievements. I could practically hear Dr. Foster's smile through the phone. He understood exactly what I was doing, creating a situation where James and Victoria would have to publicly acknowledge my positive relationship with their son. I think we could arrange something like that. Perhaps a special recognition ceremony for our program participants. Perfect. And Dr. Foster? I'd like to make another donation to the school, something substantial that would require a formal announcement and perhaps some media coverage. What did you have in mind? A new science and technology wing, complete with state-of-the-art equipment, research facilities, and scholarship funds for students pursuing STEM careers. The silence on the other end of the line told me I'd chosen exactly the right amount, large enough to be newsworthy, significant enough to require public recognition. Mrs. Rivers, that's an extraordinary gift. The board would need to vote on it, of course, but I can't imagine they'd say no. Of course. And I'd want the announcement to specifically mention that the donation was inspired by my grandson Alex's innovative work in sustainable technology. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair with deep satisfaction. Victoria had made the mistake of trying to control information, but information, like water, always found a way around obstacles. Within a week, the local newspaper ran a front-page story about my donation to Westfield Academy. The headline read, "Local businesswoman donates $2 million for new science wing," with a subtitle that mentioned, "Inspiration from Grandson's Innovation." The article included quotes from Dr. Foster praising both my generosity and Alex's exceptional talent, along with a photo of Alex in the school's engineering lab. But most importantly, it included my first public statement about my relationship with my grandchildren in over 13 years. "I'm incredibly proud of Alex and his sister Lily," the quote read. "They represent the best of the next generation, brilliant, creative, and committed to making the world better. This donation is my way of investing in their future and the futures of students like them." I was in my garden when my phone rang that evening. James's name on the caller ID. "Mom." His voice was strained. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Somewhere private." "Of course. Would you like to come here?" There was a long pause. "Yes." "But not Victoria. Just me." "Just you," I agreed. The next evening, James stood in my foyer looking around with the wide-eyed expression of someone seeing wealth displayed without apology for the first time. The marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and original artwork spoke of money spent not just on comfort, but on creating an environment worthy of the success that had earned it. "My God, Mom," he said softly. "This place is incredible." "Thank you. Would you like a tour before we talk?" I led him through the main rooms, the library with its floor-to-ceiling books and comfortable reading nooks, the dining room that could seat 20, the sunroom with its view of the gardens. But I saved the best for last. "This is the guest wing," I said, opening the door to a beautifully appointed suite with its own sitting room, bedroom, and private bath. I had it designed with Alex and Lily in mind for when they come to visit. "Mom." His voice broke slightly. "And this," I continued, leading him to the next room, "is the art studio I had built for Lily. Natural light, professional-grade easels, and a writing desk by the window for when she needs quiet space to work on her poetry." James stood in the middle of the studio, looking around at the carefully chosen furnishings, the inspirational artwork on the walls, the built-in bookcases filled with volumes on art, literature, and creative writing. "You built this for her," he said. It wasn't a question. "I built this whole house for them, James. Every room, every feature, every detail was planned with Alex and Lily in mind. They don't even know you." "No, but I know them. I've known them from a distance for 13 years, and I've spent every day of those years hoping that someday I'd have the chance to show them how much they mean to me." We moved to my library, where I poured 2 glasses of wine and settled into chairs that faced each other across a small table. "James, why are you here?" He took a long sip of wine before answering. "Because I read that newspaper article and I realized that my mother has been more involved in my children's lives. I reached across the table and touched his hand, the first physical contact we'd had in years. "It's not too late, James. Isn't it? They're almost 18. They'll be leaving for college soon. I've missed their entire childhood because I was too weak to stand up to Victoria. You haven't missed their future. And James? They need their father to start being their father, not Victoria's husband who happens to live in the same house." He squeezed my hand, and for a moment, I saw the little boy he'd been before the world taught him that keeping peace was more important than fighting for what mattered. "What do I do, Mom? How do I fix this?" "You start by making one decision, just one, based on what you think is best for Alex and Lily, regardless of what Victoria thinks about it." And if she fights me, then you fight back. Because, James, some things are worth fighting for, and your children's happiness is one of them. That night, after James left, I sat in my library feeling something I hadn't experienced in over a decade, hope that my family might actually be reparable. But I also knew that Victoria wouldn't give up without a final, desperate battle. And I was ready for war. The confrontation I'd been expecting came sooner than anticipated. 3 days after my conversation with James, I received a call from Dr. Foster that confirmed Victoria had decided to escalate the conflict. "Mrs. Rivers," he said, his voice tight with professional concern, "I'm afraid we have a situation with the mentorship program." "What kind of situation?" "Mrs. Victoria Rivers came to see me this morning. She's demanding that Alex and Lily be removed from the program immediately." I felt my jaw clench. "On what grounds?" "She claims that your involvement constitutes harassment of her family and that you're using the program to manipulate her children against their parents." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that the program is voluntary, that both students are excelling, and that any family disputes should be resolved outside of school. But she's threatening to withdraw both children from Westfield Academy entirely if we don't comply with her demands." Victoria was making her final play, using the twins' education as leverage. It was exactly the kind of desperate move I'd been expecting from someone whose careful control was slipping away. "Dr. Foster, let me ask you something. Have Alex and Lily expressed any desire to leave the program?" "Quite the opposite. Alex specifically asked me yesterday when he could schedule his next meeting with you to discuss the funding for his prototype. And Lily submitted a beautiful essay about finding her voice as a writer that specifically credits your mentorship. Then I suggest you tell Mrs. Rivers that her children are old enough to make their own decisions about their educational opportunities." "I've tried that approach. She's quite insistent." "What exactly is she threatening?" "Legal action against the school for allowing what she calls inappropriate interference in family relationships. She's also threatening to file a formal complaint with the State Education Board." I smiled grimly. Victoria was overreaching, and overreach was always a mistake. "Dr. Foster, I want you to know that if Mrs. Rivers follows through on those threats, my legal team will fully support the school's position. You've done nothing inappropriate, and I won't allow you to be punished for providing educational opportunities to deserving students." "I appreciate that, Mrs. Rivers. But I'm concerned about Alex and Lily being caught in the middle of this conflict." "So am I. Which is why I think it's time for them to understand exactly what they're caught in the middle of." That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Alex and Lily directly at home, knowing Victoria would likely answer. The phone rang 3 times before Victoria's voice, sharp with suspicion, said, "Rivers Residence." "Victoria, this is Sandra. I'd like to speak with Alex and Lily, please." "They're not available." "Are they not home? Or are you not allowing them to speak with me?" "They're busy with homework." "Then I'll wait." "Sandra." Victoria put Alex on the phone. "Now." Perhaps it was the tone of absolute authority I'd perfected in boardroom negotiations, or perhaps Victoria realized that she was fighting a battle she couldn't win through intimidation, but after a moment of silence, I heard her call, "Alex." "Phone." "Hello." Alex's voice was cautious. "Alex, it's your grandmother. I need to speak with both you and Lily. Can you put me on speaker?" Suche." "Hold on." I heard rustling, then Lily's voice saying, "Hi, grandmother." "Hello, sweetheart. I'm calling because I understand your mother has asked the school to remove you both from the mentorship program." "She did what?" Alex's voice rose with indignation. "She went to Dr. Foster today and demanded that you be withdrawn from the program immediately." "She can't do that." Lily's voice was equally angry. "That program is the best thing that's happened to us all year. Actually, she can do that." You're both still minors, and she has the legal right to make educational decisions for you. That's not fair, Alex said. We're 17. We should get to choose our own academic opportunities. You're absolutely right. Which is why I'm calling to give you some information you need to make informed decisions about your own futures. What kind of information? Lily asked. I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to do would irrevocably change their relationship with their mother. I'm going to tell you the truth about why I haven't been part of your lives for the past 13 years. Grandmother, Alex said quietly, are you sure you want to do this over the phone? I'm sure. Because tomorrow, your mother might succeed in cutting off our communication entirely, and you deserve to hear this from me rather than figuring it out on your own years from now. For the next 30 minutes, I told them everything. The returned birthday cards, the blocked phone calls, the college fund Victoria had been secretly accessing, my repeated attempts to visit that had been rebuffed, and most importantly, the lies they'd been told about my reasons for being absent. You mean, Lily said, her voice small and hurt, you've been trying to contact us this whole time? Every birthday, every Christmas, every major holiday for 13 years. And Mom has been hiding your letters and cards? Alex asked. Yes. Why? The pain in Lily's voice was heartbreaking. Why would she do that? Because she was afraid that if you knew me, you might love me. And she was afraid that if you loved me, there wouldn't be enough love left for her. But that doesn't make sense, Alex said. Love isn't finite. You can love lots of people without loving any of them less. Smart boy. He understood something his mother had never learned. You're absolutely right, Alex. But some people don't understand that. Some people think love is a competition instead of a gift. What about Dad? Lily asked. Does he know what Mom has been doing? Your father made the choice 13 years ago to keep peace in his marriage rather than fight for my relationship with you. He's been regretting that choice lately. How do you know? Because we had dinner together 3 nights ago. He came to my house, saw the rooms I've built for you, and realized what he's allowed you to miss out on. There was a long silence, and I could hear whispered conversation between the twins. Grandmother, Alex said finally, we want to come see your house. We want to see the rooms you built for us. I would love that, but you'll need to discuss it with your parents first. What if they say no? Lily asked. Then you'll have to decide how important it is to you to make your own choices about family relationships. What do you mean? I mean that in less than a year, you'll both be 18 years old. You'll be legal adults who can decide for yourselves who you want to have relationships with and how you want to spend your time. Are you saying we should wait until we're 18? Alex asked. I'm saying that sometimes the most loving thing parents can do is trust their children to make good decisions, even when those decisions aren't the ones the parents would choose. After we hung up, I sat in my library, knowing that I'd just crossed a line from which there would be no return. I'd given Alex and Lily information that would fundamentally change how they saw their family, their childhood, and their mother. Victoria would never forgive me for it. But more importantly, Alex and Lily would never forgive Victoria for the lies they'd now recognized as lies. The next morning, I was in my garden when Thomas announced that I had visitors at the gate. Through the security monitor, I saw Alex and Lily standing beside a car I didn't recognize, not James's sedan or Victoria's SUV. Let them in, I said, my heart racing with anticipation and concern. And Thomas? Make sure the gates close securely behind them. As they walked up the circular driveway toward my front door, I could see the determination in their posture. These weren't children sneaking around behind their parents' backs. These were young adults making a conscious choice about their own relationships. Grandmother, Lily said as I opened the door, we borrowed our neighbor's car. Mom and Dad think we're at the library. Are you sure you want to be here? This will escalate the conflict at home. We're sure, Alex said firmly. We've talked about it all night. We're tired of being treated like children who can't handle the truth about our own family. I hugged them both. The first time I'd held my grandchildren in 13 years, and felt something break open in my chest that I'd kept carefully locked away for more than a decade. "Welcome home," I whispered against Lily's hair, which smelled like vanilla and teenage dreams. "Home?" she asked, pulling back to look at me. "This house was built for you," I said simply. "Both of you. Every room, every detail, every comfort was chosen with the hope that someday you'd want to be here." For the next 3 hours, I gave them the tour I'd been imagining for years. Alex marveled at the library's technical books and comfortable reading nooks. Lily wept when she saw the art studio with its perfect northern light and inspirational quotes painted on the walls. But it was in my study, surrounded by the evidence of my business success and my careful documentation of their achievements, that they truly understood what they'd been kept from. "You have newspaper clippings of every award we've ever won," Alex said, looking through the scrapbooks I'd maintained from afar. "You have copies of poems I published in literary magazines that I didn't even know you'd seen," Lily added, her voice full of wonder. "I've been watching you grow up from a distance," I said, "celebrating your successes, worrying about your challenges, and loving you both every single day for 13 years. Why didn't you fight harder to see us?" Alex asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. "Because I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, your parents would move even farther away. I was afraid that fighting for you would result in losing you completely. And now you're old enough to understand the difference between fighting for someone and fighting with someone. And I'm old enough to know that some things are worth the risk." We were sitting in my sunroom, sharing tea and the stories we'd never been able to share, when my security system alerted me to a car at the gate. Through the monitor, I saw James's sedan with both him and Victoria inside, both looking grim and determined. "Your parents are here," I told the twins. "We know they'd figure out where we were eventually," Lily said. "We left them a note." "What kind of note?" "We told them we were visiting our grandmother and that we'd be home for dinner," Alex said. "We also told them that we wanted to have a family meeting tonight to discuss some things we'd learned about our family history." Smart children. They weren't hiding their choices or sneaking around. They were being direct about their decisions and their expectations. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I asked. "We're ready," Lily said firmly. "We're tired of living in a family where truth is optional." I pressed the button to open the gates and watched through the window as James and Victoria walked up my driveway like soldiers approaching enemy territory. The war for my grandchildren was about to reach its climax, and for the first time in 13 years, I had my grandchildren beside me when the battle began. Victoria entered my home like a hurricane in designer clothing, her perfectly styled hair and flawless makeup unable to disguise the fury radiating from every pore. "Alex. Lily," she called out before she was fully through the door. "We're leaving. Now." "No," Lily said calmly from where she sat beside me in the sunroom. "We're not." Victoria stopped short, clearly not expecting direct defiance. Behind her, James looked torn between his wife's anger and what appeared to be genuine curiosity about his children's choice. "What did you just say to me?" Victoria's voice rose dangerously. "I said we're not leaving," Lily repeated. "James." Victoria's voice cracked with panic. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. For 17 years, I've made decisions about our children based on what you thought was best. Maybe it's time I listen to what they think is best." Alex and Lily exchanged a look of surprised hope, clearly not expecting support from their father. "Dad," Alex said carefully, "we know this is complicated. We know there's history between you and grandmother that we don't fully understand. But," Lily continued, "we're old enough to make our own decisions about who we want to have relationships with." Victoria looked back and forth between her husband and children, realizing that her usual tactics weren't working. "Fine," she said, her voice taking on the manipulative sweetness I remembered from her early visits to my penthouse. "Let's all sit down and discuss this like adults." She moved toward the sunroom as if she owned it, clearly intending to take control of the conversation. But I had no intention of allowing that. "Victoria," I said calmly, "I don't recall inviting you to sit down." She stopped mid-step. "Excuse me? This is my home. Alex and Lily are here as my invited guests. You and James are here as... What, exactly? We're here as their parents." "Are you?" Because parents who respect their children might have called to arrange a visit rather than arriving uninvited to demand that their nearly adult children leave a place they chose to be. James cleared his throat. "Mom, we came because we were worried. The twins left a note saying they were coming to see you, but they've never been here before. Because Victoria wasn't allowed to invite them before. But you're right to be concerned about their safety. Would you like a tour of the house so you can see the environment your children are in?" It was a masterful move. By framing it as parental concern rather than confrontation, I was forcing them to either accept my hospitality or reveal their true motivations. "That would be nice," James said, ignoring Victoria's sharp look. For the next 30 minutes, I led them through my mansion the same way I'd shown the twins, but with a different narrative. Where I'd shown Alex and Lily rooms designed for their comfort and happiness, I showed James and Victoria evidence of my success, my independence, and my ability to provide for my grandchildren in ways their parents never could. "This is the guest wing," I said, opening the doors to the beautifully appointed suites. "Alex and Lily are welcome here anytime for study sessions, creative projects, or just when they need quiet space to think." "It's beautiful," James said genuinely. "But Mom, they have rooms at home, do they? Or do they have rooms in Victoria's house where they're allowed to exist according to her rules and preferences?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "They have loving homes where their parents." "Their parents," I interrupted, one of whom has been lying to them about their grandmother for 13 years. "I protected them from confusion and hurt. You protected yourself from competition." The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months, when Victoria's carefully constructed narrative would collapse under the weight of obvious truth. "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Let's examine your protection, Victoria. You protected them from birthday cards that wished them happiness. You protected them from Christmas gifts chosen with love. You protected them from a grandmother who wanted to celebrate their achievements and support their dreams. I protected them from someone who tried to break up their parents' marriage. I tried to protect my son from someone who was isolating him from everyone who loved him. There's a difference." Lily stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the adult anger with startling clarity. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Victoria turned to her daughter with desperate hope. "Of course, sweetheart. Why didn't you ever tell us that grandmother is trying to contact us?" "Because I knew it would confuse you." "That's not an answer. Why didn't you let us decide for ourselves whether we wanted to be confused?" The question was so direct, so mature, that Victoria seemed stunned. "Because you were children. We've been children for 17 years, Alex said quietly. "At what point were you planning to trust us to handle complicated family relationships?" "When you were old enough to understand." "We're old enough now," Lily interrupted. "We're old enough to understand that you've been making choices for us that maybe we should have been part of making." Victoria looked around the room desperately, seeking support from James, but he was staring at his children with something that looked like pride mixed with regret. "James," she pleaded, "tell them they don't understand the whole situation." "What part don't they understand?" he asked quietly. "They don't understand how manipulative she can be, how she uses money and guilt to control people." "Like you've been using our dependence on you to control us?" Alex asked. The question was devastating in its simplicity. Victoria stared at her son, as if he'd slapped her. I have never controlled you. I've guided you. I've protected you. You've made every major decision about our lives without asking what we wanted, Lily said. Where we lived, which schools we attended, which activities we could participate in, who we could be friends with, and apparently which family members we could know. I did what I thought was best. For who? Alex asked. Best for us? Or best for you? The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked around the room, at her children who were questioning her authority, at her husband who was failing to support her, at me sitting calmly in my chair like a queen holding court. This is all your fault, she said, turning on me with renewed fury. You've poisoned them against me. You've turned my own children into strangers. I've told them the truth, Victoria. If the truth turns them against you, perhaps the problem isn't the truth. The truth? The truth is that you're a bitter old woman who can't stand that your son chose someone else over you. Is that what you think this is about? Competition for James's affection. I know that's what this is about. I stood up slowly, with the deliberate grace I'd perfected in boardrooms. Victoria, you're absolutely right that this is about competition. But you've misunderstood the competition entirely. What do you mean? I'm not competing with you for James's love. I'm competing with you for my grandchildren's respect. And after 17 years of lying to them, controlling them, and treating them like possessions rather than people, I'm winning. The color drained from her face as she finally understood what had been happening. You planned this, she whispered. All of it. The mentorship program, the donations, the meetings with the twins. You planned all of it. I plan to give my grandchildren opportunities to know me as I really am rather than as you've portrayed me. If that threatened your relationship with them, perhaps you should examine why the truth is so dangerous to your version of family. Victoria looked at Alex and Lily with something approaching desperation. Please, she said, her voice breaking. I love you both so much. Everything I've done has been because I love you. We know you love us, Mom, Lily said gently. But love doesn't justify lies. And love doesn't require us to choose between you and grandmother, Alex added. We should be able to love both of you. But if we have to choose, Lily said quietly, we need you to know that we're going to choose truth over comfort. We're going to choose the relationships that treat us like intelligent people capable of making our own decisions. Victoria stared at her daughter. This poised, articulate young woman who just delivered an ultimatum with devastating kindness. What are you saying? We're saying that we want grandmother in our lives, Alex said. We want to know her, spend time with her, and build the relationship we should have had all along. And if you can't accept that, Lily continued, then you're going to have to decide whether your need to control us is more important than your love for us. As I watched Victoria realize that she was losing the war she'd started 13 years ago, I felt not triumph, but a deep sadness for the damage that had been done to everyone involved. The twins were right. They shouldn't have to choose between their mother and their grandmother. But Victoria had made that choice inevitable by refusing to share them, by lying about me, and by treating their love like a finite resource that had to be hoarded rather than a renewable gift that grew stronger when shared. James, she turned to her husband one last time, please, tell them they're making a mistake. James looked at his wife, then at his children, then at me. The 3 generations of his family that had been torn apart by fear and control and the assumption that love was something that could be lost rather than something that multiplied when given freely. I think, he said slowly, that the mistake was made 13 years ago when we decided that keeping you happy was more important than doing what was right for our children. It was the moment Victoria finally understood that she had lost not just her grandchildren, but her husband as well. And as I watched her face crumble with the realization that her carefully constructed world was collapsing around her, I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. The weeks following that confrontation unfolded with the inexorable logic of consequences finally catching up to choices made years earlier. Victoria, faced with the reality that her control over her family was dissolving, made increasingly desperate attempts to reassert her authority. She tried forbidding Alex and Lily from visiting me, a command they politely ignored, pointing out that they were nearly 18 and capable of making their own decisions about how to spend their free time. She attempted to ground them for disrespecting her authority, a punishment that proved impossible to enforce when James refused to support it. She even went so far as to threaten to cut off their college funding, only to discover that the money she'd been relying on had been mine all along, and that I'd already established new accounts in both twins' names that she had no access to. But it was her final, most desperate gambit that sealed her fate permanently. I was in my library one evening, helping Alex refine his business plan for the sustainable energy prototype, when my attorney Harold called. "Sandra," he said without preamble, "you need to know that Victoria Rivers has filed a petition with the family court." "What kind of petition?" "She's seeking a restraining order against you on behalf of her minor children. She's claiming that you're psychologically manipulating them and that your influence constitutes a threat to their well-being." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "On what evidence?" "Apparently, she's claiming that your sudden involvement in their lives represents a pattern of predatory behavior designed to alienate them from their parents." "And what does the court say about this?" "The judge has scheduled a hearing for next week. Alex and Lily will need to testify about their relationship with you and whether they feel manipulated or threatened." After I hung up, I looked at Alex, who had clearly overheard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. "She's trying to get a court order to keep us away from you, isn't she?" he said quietly. "Yes." "Can she do that?" "She can try. But Alex, the judge is going to want to hear from both you and Lily about how you feel about our relationship. Are you prepared for that?" He set down his calculator and looked at me with a serious expression that reminded me so much of his grandfather. "Grandmother, I've spent the last month getting to know the most generous, intelligent, and loving person I've ever met. Someone who supported my dreams, encouraged my ambitions, and treated me like an adult capable of making good decisions. And I'm not going to let anyone, not even Mom, take that away from me." The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I arrived at the courthouse dressed in my finest navy suit and pearls, accompanied by Harold, and carrying a briefcase full of evidence that I hoped wouldn't be necessary to use. Victoria sat across the courtroom with her own attorney, looking pale but determined. James sat beside her, though his body language suggested he was there under duress rather than conviction. Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her 50s with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every possible variation of family dysfunction. She reviewed the petition with careful attention before looking up at the assembled parties. "Mrs. Victoria Rivers," she said, "you're seeking a restraining order to prevent Mrs. Sandra Rivers from having contact with your minor children, Alex and Lily Rivers, both age 17. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And the basis for this request?" "Mrs. Rivers has been using her wealth to manipulate my children against me. She's been filling their heads with lies about their family and trying to turn them against their parents." Judge Morrison turned to me. "Mrs. Sandra Rivers, how do you respond to these allegations?" "Your Honor, I've been attempting to build a relationship with my grandchildren after being estranged from them for 13 years. Every interaction I've had with Alex and Lily has been appropriate, educational, and conducted with their parents' knowledge. Mrs. Victoria Rivers, can you provide specific examples of this alleged manipulation?" Victoria launched into a detailed account of my involvement in the twins' lives, the mentorship program, the donations to their school, the visits to my home. But as she spoke, I realized she was making my case for me. Every example she gave demonstrated my genuine interest in the twins' education and well-being. "Mrs. Rivers," the judge said when Victoria finished, "these activities you've described, mentoring, educational support, providing opportunities for academic advancement, these don't sound like manipulation. They sound like grandparenting." Victoria's attorney leaned forward. Your Honor, Mrs. Rivers has been absent from these children's lives for 13 years. Her sudden, intensive involvement suggests ulterior motives. And what would those motives be? To undermine the parental authority of Mr. and Mrs. Rivers and to alienate the children from their mother. Judge Morrison made some notes before speaking again. I'd like to hear from Alex and Lily themselves. Alex Rivers, please approach the bench. Alex stood up with a quiet confidence I'd come to admire, walking to the front of the courtroom with his shoulders straight and his head high. Alex, Judge Morrison said gently, I want you to tell me, in your own words, about your relationship with your grandmother. Your Honor, 3 months ago, I didn't know my grandmother at all. I thought she was someone who hadn't wanted to be part of our lives. But when I met her through the school mentorship program, I discovered that she's been trying to contact my sister and me for 13 years. How did that make you feel? Confused at first, then hurt that we'd been lied to, then grateful that she never gave up on us. Do you feel that your grandmother has manipulated you or pressured you in any way? No, Your Honor. She's treated me like an intelligent person capable of making my own decisions. She supported my dreams and helped me think about my future in ways that no one else ever has. And how do you feel about your relationship with your parents? Alex glanced at his father, then at Victoria, before answering carefully. I love my parents, but I've learned that love doesn't mean accepting lies or giving up my right to make decisions about my own relationships. Judge Morrison nodded. Lily Rivers, please approach. Lily walked forward with the same quiet dignity her brother had shown, and I felt my heart swell with pride for these remarkable young people. Lily, same question. Tell me about your relationship with your grandmother. Your Honor, my grandmother has given me something I didn't even know I was missing. Unconditional support for who I am rather than who someone else thinks I should be. Can you elaborate? She celebrates my writing, encourages my creativity, and treats my ideas like they matter. She's built spaces in her home specifically for my interests, and she's never once suggested that I should be different than I am. Do you feel manipulated by her? No, Your Honor. I feel seen by her. The simple honesty of that statement seemed to impact everyone in the courtroom. And what about your relationship with your parents? Lily was quiet for a moment before answering. I love my parents, but I've realized that my mom's love comes with conditions. She loves me when I agree with her, when I make choices she approves of, when I don't ask questions that make her uncomfortable. And your grandmother's love? Doesn't have conditions. Judge Morrison made more notes before addressing Victoria directly. Mrs. Rivers, I've listened to your concerns, but I've also listened to your children. These are 17-year-old students who will be legal adults in less than a year. They've expressed clearly that they want a relationship with their grandmother and that they don't feel manipulated or threatened by her. But, Your Honor, furthermore, the evidence you've presented doesn't support claims of manipulation. Educational support, mentorship, and family relationship building are not grounds for a restraining order. Victoria's face crumpled as she realized her final gambit had failed. Your petition is denied, Judge Morrison continued. These young people are old enough to make their own decisions about family relationships, and there's no evidence that Mrs. Sandra Rivers poses any threat to their well-being. As we left the courthouse, Victoria approached me one final time. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked the conviction it had once carried. Yes, Victoria, I said calmly, it is. You've lost the legal battle, you've lost the moral high ground, and most importantly, you've lost the trust of your children. They're still my children. Yes, they are. And they always will be. But they're also my grandchildren, and they're old enough to decide for themselves what that means. As I watched Victoria walk away, defeated and isolated by her own choices, I felt not triumph, but a deep sadness for all the years that had been wasted, all the relationships that had been damaged by fear and control. But looking at Alex and Lily standing beside me, both of them tall and confident and ready to F. 1 year later, I stood in my garden watching Alex demonstrate his sustainable energy prototype to a group of potential investors. His business plan had attracted serious attention, and at 18, he was already being courted by venture capitalists who recognized the brilliance of his innovations. Lily sat at the outdoor table nearby, working on her college application essays. She'd been accepted to 3 prestigious universities and was having the delightful problem of choosing between excellent options for pursuing her dreams of becoming a writer and social activist. James had moved into the pool house, not as a defeated exile, but as a man rebuilding his relationship with his children and slowly remembering who he'd been before he'd lost himself in Victoria's expectations. His graphic design business was finally thriving now that he was following his own creative vision instead of Victoria's ideas about respectability. Victoria herself had moved to her sister's house in another state. The twins had seen her twice in the past year, awkward visits where she'd attempted to rebuild relationships she'd spent 17 years controlling rather than nurturing. The conversations were polite but distant, hampered by her inability to acknowledge the damage her lies had caused and her persistent belief that she'd been protecting rather than manipulating her children. She keeps saying she did everything out of love, Lily had told me after the most recent visit. But I think she still doesn't understand that love and possession aren't the same thing. Alex looked up from his presentation to the investors and caught my eye, giving me a small smile that filled my heart with warmth. In the past year, I'd watched him transform from a withdrawn, overly serious teenager into a confident young man who understood his own worth and potential. Lily had undergone an even more dramatic transformation. The guarded, careful girl who'd been afraid to trust her own perceptions had become a passionate advocate for truth and authenticity. Her writing had gained national recognition, and she'd already been offered internships with several prestigious publications. But more than their individual successes, I was proud of the people they'd become. Kind, honest, thoughtful young adults who understood that real strength came from facing difficult truths rather than hiding from them. Mrs. Rivers, one of the investors, called to me. Alex tells us you were his first business mentor. What's your assessment of his potential? I looked at my grandson, tall, confident, and absolutely radiant with the joy that comes from pursuing your passion with the support of people who believe in you. I think, I said, that Alex represents the best of what happens when intelligent young people are given the freedom to chase their dreams without limits. And the funding he's requesting is a fraction of what his innovations will be worth within 5 years. The investors exchanged impressed glances. My reputation in the business community carried weight, and my endorsement of Alex's project would open doors for him that might otherwise remain closed. After the investors left, promising to have an answer within a week, Alex joined Lily and me at the outdoor table where we'd taken to having dinner together several evenings a week. "How do you think it went?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "I think you're going to have your choice of funding options," I said. "The question is which partnership will serve your long-term goals best." "I still can't believe this is real," Lily said, looking around at the garden, the house, the life we'd built together over the past year. "A year ago, we didn't even know you existed." "You always existed in my heart," I said softly. "I just had to wait for you to find your way back to me." "Do you think Mom will ever understand what she lost?" Alex asked. It was a question he'd been asking in various forms for months, and my answer was always the same. "I think Victoria loves you both very much, but I don't think she'll ever understand that love means letting people make their own choices, even when those choices don't serve your preferences." "Do you forgive her?" Lily asked. "For the 13 years we lost?" I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness was something I'd been thinking about a lot lately, not because I felt pressure to forgive, but because I wanted to understand what forgiveness would mean in this context. "I don't forgive the lies she told or the years she stole from us," I said finally. But I'm grateful for the people those experiences shaped you into becoming. What do you mean? I mean that if you'd grown up with a grandmother who spoiled you and never challenged you to think independently, you might not have developed the strength and wisdom that make you so remarkable now. So, you think the pain was worth it? I think the pain taught you to value truth and authenticity in ways that children who've never been lied to might not understand. And I think that's going to make you both extraordinary adults. James joined us as the sun was setting, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the relaxed expression of someone who'd finally stopped fighting battles he couldn't win. "How did the presentation go?" he asked Alex. "Grandmother thinks I'm going to have multiple funding offers." "I don't think it," I corrected. "I know it. Your project is brilliant, your presentation was professional, and your business plan is solid. The only question is whether you're ready for the responsibility that comes with serious investment." "I'm ready," Alex said with quiet confidence. "I've had good teachers." As we sat around the table sharing wine and conversation and the comfortable intimacy that comes from genuine family connection, I reflected on the year that had transformed all of our lives. I'd set out to reclaim my grandchildren from someone who'd stolen them through lies and manipulation. But what I discovered was that reclaiming them had also reclaimed parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. The nurturing instincts I'd suppressed during my years of building business success, the capacity for unconditional love that I'd protected behind walls of professional achievement. Victoria had been wrong about many things, but she'd been especially wrong about the nature of love. She'd seen it as finite, something to be hoarded and controlled. But love, real love, multiplied when shared. The more I loved Alex and Lily, the more love I had to give. The more they loved me, the more capacity they had for loving others. "Grandmother," Lily said as we prepared to go inside, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" I looked around the table at these three people who'd become the center of my world. My son, who'd finally learned to trust his own judgment. My grandchildren, who'd chosen truth over comfort and authenticity over security. "I'm happy that you're both free to become whoever you're meant to be," I said. "I'm happy that you understand your own worth and potential. And I'm happy that you know you're loved completely, without conditions or expectations." "But are you happy?" Alex pressed. "After everything that happened, after all the years of fighting, are you at peace?" I considered the question seriously. Was I at peace? Or was I simply victorious? "I'm satisfied," I said finally. "I set out to give you both something you'd been denied, the love of a grandmother who believes in your potential and supports your dreams. I succeeded in that goal." "And Victoria?" Lily asked quietly. "Do you feel bad about what happened to her?" "I feel sad about the choices she made that led to her isolation. But Lily, Victoria created her own exile by refusing to share you, by lying about me, and by treating love like a competition she had to win." "She lost everything," Alex observed. "She lost what she tried to keep by force." "But Alex, she could still have a relationship with you both if she chose to build one based on honesty and respect instead of control and manipulation. Do you think she ever will?" "I think Victoria will do what Victoria has always done, whatever serves her need to see herself as the victim rather than the architect of her own consequences." As we walked into the house together, I thought about the legacy I was leaving my grandchildren. Not just financial security, though they had that. Not just educational opportunities, though those were important. But something more valuable. The understanding that relationships built on truth and respect were worth fighting for, and that love given freely was the most powerful force in the world. Victoria had tried to build a family through control and manipulation. She'd lost them by refusing to trust them. I'd reclaimed that family through patience, honesty, and unconditional support. I'd won them by treating them like the intelligent, capable people they were. Some wounds don't heal, they become inheritance. The wound Victoria had inflicted on our family had become my grandchildren's inheritance of strength, wisdom, and the understanding that truth, however painful, was always preferable to comfortable lies. Standing in my library that night, surrounded by the evidence of the life I'd built and the family I'd reclaimed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a decade: complete satisfaction. The war was over. Truth had triumphed over lies. Love had conquered control. And my grandchildren, brilliant, strong, authentic, and free, would carry that victory into their own futures, teaching their own children someday that family was built not through force, but through the careful cultivation of trust, respect, and unconditional love. Victoria would live with her choices for the rest of her life. But Alex and Lily would live with mine, and that made all the difference. If Sandra's 13-year journey of patient, strategic love moved you, you understand something powerful about the difference between revenge and justice. Sometimes the most devastating response to betrayal isn't immediate retaliation. It's building something so authentic and beautiful that lies can no longer survive in its presence. Sandra's story teaches us that real power isn't about controlling others. It's about becoming so grounded in your own worth that manipulators lose their ability to hurt you. Her victory wasn't just reclaiming her grandchildren. It was showing them what unconditional love actually looks like. Our book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, explores these deeper truths about healing from family betrayal and manipulation. It's not just about getting over what was done to you. It's about becoming someone so strong in your authentic self that toxic people become irrelevant to your happiness. This book contains practical strategies for recognizing manipulation patterns, rebuilding relationships based on truth rather than control, and teaching others through your example that authentic love is always more powerful than fear-based tactics. Click the link in the description to get your copy today, because every woman deserves to know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept love that comes with conditions attached. If Sandra's patient victory resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of women who chose truth over comfort, authenticity over easy peace, and long-term healing over short-term revenge. Share this with any woman who needs to remember that real family is built on respect and honesty, not control and manipulation. Remember, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building a life so fulfilling that their opinions become irrelevant. Some battles are won not through fighting, but through becoming someone so genuinely lovable that the truth speaks for itself. Thank you for watching, and remember, patience, truth, and unconditional love will always triumph over lies, control, and manipulation. Your story isn't over, and the best chapters might be yet to come.